Hey guys, it's Matty Graham here from Exponential Performance Coaching. Welcome back to another Whiteboard Wednesday. Now today I want to take a little bit more of a dive into how to improve your anaerobic threshold. I've had a couple of questions around training your anaerobic threshold based on a video that I've previously done. So what I want to do today is give you my 5 key sessions to improve your anaerobic threshold. Now before we do that, if you're serious about your training, you want to maximize your performance any way you can, make sure you hit the subscribe button in the middle of the screen now. You're going to get a notification every single time I upload a new video, so you don't miss out on any of the training tips and information I've got coming out. So hit that button now, and let's go take a look at my 5 key sessions to improve your anaerobic threshold. So how do we improve our anaerobic threshold? Now, anaerobic threshold is much more trainable than VO2 max, and it also is a much better performance indicator than VO2 max. So if you're looking at putting your focus on a specific area of your training, and you've already got a good base of endurance, then anaerobic threshold is a really good place to start looking after that. Now, just a reminder about anaerobic threshold. On this graph here, what we've got along the bottom here would be power output or speed. That's just work, how much effort you're putting in. Up the side here we can imagine we've got lactate or lactic acid. As intensity or work rate or speed increases, as does lactic acid, to a certain point where it starts increasing exponentially to fatigue. Now that's classified as an anaerobic threshold. When we train our anaerobic threshold, our aim is to push this curve here to the right, so that now our anaerobic threshold happens at a higher work rate or a higher power output or a higher speed. So we go faster for the same effort. The way to train anaerobic threshold, based on the literature, is to accumulate as much time as possible at or around anaerobic threshold. So that's what we want to keep in mind as we talk through our sessions today. Now, the first one I want to give you in my top 5 is just get out and train. If you are new to endurance sport or you're new to training in general, just getting out and training, doesn't really matter what it is, if you're starting from a low level, will improve your anaerobic threshold just naturally. If you've already done some of that, you've got a good base underneath you, then you can start moving on to these other sessions. Now, one session I really like is just an unstructured hill session. So just go out and ride or run some hills. On the uphills, run hard. On the downhills, recover. What I find is this allows athletes to train to how they feel, but also get a good training stimulus in without having the structure and the mental pressure of structured intervals. So what I'll often do is use this sort of hill session, an unstructured interval session, in the early season or before we launch into full-blown structured anaerobic threshold training. So you could just go out for your run, say, run the uphills hard, cruise on the downhills. Same goes with your bike. So a really good way of getting some anaerobic threshold work in, but without actually specifically being locked into a set time, set recovery, that sort of thing. The third session that I really like is a really good introductory session to structured interval training for anaerobic threshold. What we've got is 4 reps of 4 minutes with 2 minutes of recovery. Now the key thing with that anaerobic threshold is our intervals want to be somewhere around 2 to 1 in terms of our work to recovery ratio. So you want to recover half as long as you work. And that's really important because we don't want the body to clear away all the lactate that's accumulated in the body. And I talk more about that in another video, which I'll post a link to it here, about how to train your anaerobic threshold and VO2 max, and I dig into that a little more, sort of extended video. But the key thing you want to know is that 2 to 1 work to recovery ratio is key for you. So 4 minutes with 2 minutes of recovery, and what will happen is you will clock up time in that effective training zone. Bang, bang, bang. Easy. Session number 4. Again, we're progressing this, we're stretching it out. I really like to use this one for triathletes, multi-sporters, cyclists that are doing time trial type efforts. So 4 times 10 minutes, so slightly longer with 5 minutes of recovery. So again, we're clocking up that time in that effective training zone, training at or around anaerobic threshold. 4 by 10 with 5 minutes of recovery. Really good for those time trialing type efforts. And the final one, our sweet spot intervals. Now, if you've ever done any reading or watching or research around Hunter Allen and Andy Coggin's training methods, they really like to use the sweet spot intervals. And the whole concept of the sweet spot interval is working at an intensity slightly lower than threshold. So you get maximal physiological load without the physiological stress that comes with it. And so what they prescribe is an interval that is about 5 to 10% lower in terms of your functional threshold power or your functional threshold heart rate. So what happens is, you can imagine this is threshold, all that sensitive training zone that you want to get up into to increase your anaerobic threshold. If you train just below this, you're able to clock up a large amount of work without it fatiguing you too much. That's the concept behind it anyway. I really like using sweet spot intervals later in the training phase. Once you've done a little bit of this anaerobic threshold work, progress into this where the efforts are longer and become more race specific. So for say like Ironman athlete, coast to coasters, this is really good to push out that time spent down in that time trial position, but not just cruising on your zone 2. So sweet spot intervals, for an example here, we've got 2 20-minute efforts with 5 minutes of recovery. On the other hand as well, if you use this as a progression, you can also use it as a good starting spot as well. Some of these sessions can be quite taxing, quite hard. So if you start out with a slightly lower sweet spot efforts, then you can move back into these higher intensity ones as well. So there you have it, my top 5 sessions for improving your anaerobic threshold. If you found this video useful, make sure you give it a like below. Feel free to share it around. Or you might not want to share it around because you want to keep the competitive advantage over your mates. If you've got any questions about this video, please just let me know. If you want to know why chocolate milk is so good for post-training recovery, check out this video up the top here. Or if you want to know the key things behind successful athletes, check out this video down the bottom there. Keep up the good work, keep training hard, but most importantly, train